Did you ever think you might be a changeling? Does anybody know what a changeling is? I do, but only because I spent way too many of my formative years reading those awful, creepy, scary Grimm's fairy tales. And in Grimm's fairy tales, they are just lousy with changelings. A changeling is a baby switched at birth by trolls or fairies or some other baby switching force. So it's a baby that doesn't belong in that home. When I was little, I really thought I was a changeling, or sometimes I really hoped I was. Usually this would happen right after my mother had very unfairly said I could not have a piece of cake 1 minute before dinner. Or my father had very unlovingly said, no, you may not have that toy that you so desperately think you need. They can't be my real parents. My real parents wouldn't be mean to me like that, I would think. I wish my real parents would show up because they would give me the cookie or the toy or whatever it is. I just don't belong here. Well, that feeling of not being part of the family, not belonging in the family, came back later in my life with a vengeance when I realized I was gay. And at that time, other members of my family were the ones who had that feeling that I didn't belong in the family. So for 10 years, I didn't have a place in my family. I was excluded. Now, I should say that, just so you know, just like in the after-school specials, after that decade, feelings softened, worldviews opened, we had reconciliation, and so everything's good now. But for those 10 years, I didn't have a family. But I should say that before those 10 years started, I joined COS. So in what is kind of a cliche among LGBT folk, I had formed my alternate family here. I'd found a spot where people accepted me, flaws and all, where people knew my backstory and supported me. So I'd created that alternate family. And church is a great place to do it, this church in particular. But it's always seemed to me that it's kind of unfair to give LGBT people all the credit for coming up with this postmodern alternate family structure, because we all do that, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be issues of sexuality. You could be separated from your family by death or distance or just some other issue that prevents you from having a normal, healthy relationship with them. So we all need to sort of fill in gaps and holes, create a new alternate family that knows us and supports us. And as I say, church is a great place to do that. But for those of us who sort of retreated to a warm, comfy, cozy, fuzzy place like church to recreate our family, today's readings are kind of a problem. I mean, this part of Matthew comes in a longer section where he's essentially naming the disciples, picking them out, and then telling them what he expects them to do. And it's a long, hard list. I mean, the first couple, proclaim like heralds. Okay, well, we're Episcopalian, so we'll proclaim like quiet, tasteful heralds. But we can proclaim. We can do that. Heal the sick. Okay, we got that. We can do that. But then he's talking about preaching. He's talking about speaking truth to power. He's talking about saying edgy, hard things to important people. Things that might get you ostracized, that might get you killed. I mean, look how it worked out for him. Yikes. I just got here. I just figured out how to deal with, I just figured out a place where they'll know when it's my birthday and help me figure out what to do at Christmas. I didn't sign up for this. But really, isn't that the point? I mean, for all of us who have retreated to church as a cozy, supportive family environment, and those of us who've helped create that comfort and support here, we're supposed to not just be inward-facing, right? Isn't that what today's gospel is talking about? We're supposed to link arms facing outward and look at the world and figure out what issues are there out there in the world that Jesus would like us to wade into. And we need to wade into those issues at a great cost, right? We need to do it forcefully and strongly at our own expense, at the expense of our relationships with others potentially. It's a scary challenge. Once we get over the fear factor, though, there is no shortage of issues, right? Easy to find any number of things that we can think, yep, Jesus wants us to try and tackle that one. I mean, immigration, climate, Syria, a whole host. But you know what? Pride Sunday, Pride Month, let's just talk about LGBT stuff for a little bit. I mean, you can see in Chechnya where they're beating gay people, trying to drive them out of the country. You can see it in Indonesia where police are routinely arresting and harassing scores of gay people. But I'm sad to say that you don't need to go all the way across the globe to find evidence of persecution of LGBT folks. It's still happening right here in America, even though we have marriage equality. Whew, we got marriage equality, we're done, right? No, we're not really done. There are 5 states now that have laws on the books or under consideration that would make it legal to discriminate against LGBT couples in adoption. The FBI tracked about 5,000 plus, maybe almost 6,000 hate crimes. Of those, the biggest single chunk are LGBT hate crimes. And that's probably underreported, right? Because a lot of people are hesitant to report that they've been a victim of that kind of a crime because then it identifies them and makes them subject to maybe more violence. 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBT, and they cite rejection by their family as the reason that they are out on the street. There are a lot of tough issues out there that we could address, a lot of scary, challenging things that we could try and help solve. My parents are not big fans of family reunions, but I've still been to a couple of them. And it could be my doer German Lutheran heritage, but it strikes me that a big chunk of every family reunion is spent talking about hard things, difficult things, challenges, bad events that people dealt with and overcame. Remember when the pastor died suddenly and the congregation made Grandma leave the parsonage so quickly she could barely pack, and she had no money and had to go get that job in the factory and live in that tiny apartment? Remember when Uncle Mike got polio and his leg was so shriveled he could barely walk, but he still insisted on doing hikes and other activities with his classmates, even if it meant he had to get up and leave 3 hours ahead of everybody so he'd arrive at the destination at the same time? Remember Aunt Sally when she got divorced and she didn't have a degree, but she went out and got a degree and got a job to support herself. Those hard things, those challenges, those difficulties overcome, that's such an important part of the fabric of our family, of our common shared experience. So I wonder, in another 150 years, when we have the great COS family reunion, what hard thing, what challenge, what difficult thing are we going to talk about? I think now is the time to be creating the fodder for those conversations.